Welcome to the Feed Your Family Tonight podcast. Do you dread hearing the question, what's for dinner? Whether you spend your days keeping up with toddlers, running kids to after-school activities, or juggling a career and family, getting dinner on the table can be a struggle for us all. I'm Mariefiebach, a business owner, wife, and mom of 4. I'm on a mission to build stronger families one dinner at a time, and I'm here with tips, tricks, and inspiration you need to feed your family tonight. Hello, friends. Welcome to the Feed Your Family Tonight podcast. I am so excited. We have a guest here for an on-air coaching call. Her name is Carmen, and I'm going to let her tell you a little bit about where she's from, what her family is like, and then we're going to kind of dig into some of her weeknight dinner challenges to see if we can find some small tweaks to make her life a little bit easier. Carmen, welcome. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Oh, the pleasure is mine. I always love meeting with new people and finding out what their family is like and where they're finding challenges in getting dinner on the table. So let's dive right into that. Tell us a little bit about your family, your kids, their ages, and a little bit about what life is like in your home at the dinner hour.
Sure. My name is Carmen Niemensverdry, and we have 4 kids, one on the way. Cole is 16, Kinsey is 5, Hadassah is 3, and Shiloh is 1. And we will have a new boy or girl in February. And my husband works as a journeyman carpenter, and he works 50 or 60 hours a week. And he's also on call 1 week a month. I am a stay-at-home mom, a prior teacher. I think that pretty much sums it up.
Yeah. So you are busy. I bet you are, because you have a big span of ages. When you have teenagers all the way down to a newborn on the way, that means that you're managing a lot of different needs in your family, a husband who is working probably a very highly physical job. And then you have children that are all the way from toddlers up to teenagers, which means that you're meeting the needs of a lot of different kinds of people. So many times we'll be in a phase where we have all toddlers, or I'm in a phase where I have all teenagers, but you have the gamut.
Yeah.
How does that affect your weeknight dinners?
We really like to do weeknight dinners, most nights of the week, but oftentimes it ends up being me and all the young girls. Now that my teenage son has a job, he's there a lot of times during the dinner hour. He used to be with us. And then my husband is kind of hit or miss. Sometimes he makes it in time and sometimes he doesn't. And I haven't really figured out the best way to do it. A lot of nights I'm just like, this is when we're having dinner. I hope he makes it. If not, we're just going to go about dinner and bedtime anyways,
Well, and with littles, bedtime is so important. When you have a house full of teenagers like I do, there's a little bit more room for wiggle room because they can grab a snack themselves. They can, feed themselves if they have to. But when you're dealing with littles, that dinner time and that bedtime is usually a lot more fixed and a lot more important because the consequences the next day. If you don't eat dinner on time, you don't get them to bed on time, and then they get cranky, and then you're going to have a miserable day the next day.
Yes. And they turn into, it becomes arsenic hour about 5 or 6 o'clock, and it's a hot mess here some days. Yeah.
So when your son, is he working? Is he at a place where he eats before, eats after? Does he eat at work? Tell me about that.
He works for a local pizza place, so a lot of times he'll just eat there. But I think that might come to an end because he's kind of had enough pizza, is what he's saying. So sometimes he will just eat whatever. I try to make extra so there's something for him to eat. Sometimes he'll just have a bowl of cereal or something. It's kind of fend for yourself by the time you get home, kid. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, no, I have 4 teenagers. 2 of them have jobs, and it's definitely a little bit of that in my house. We definitely eat in shifts quite a bit too. Yeah. And with your husband, then, do you often just make him a late plate? What do you do when he's coming in late?
It kind of depends. If I know, I usually end up calling him right around when I get ready to start dinner, so I have kind of an idea. That still isn't always guaranteed because sometimes he'll think he's leaving a certain time and then something comes up and it's later. Usually I will, if it's going to be, he's going to be home shortly after, I'll leave out the dishes so he can serve himself. But lots of times I'll just make up a plate for him or put it all away in big containers and he can serve himself. It kind of depends on what it is.
Okay. Yeah. And definitely some things hold better. Some things you need to, I totally understand that. Okay, so tell me the kinds of foods you are making now and what are the foods that are beloved by your family?
Well, now that it's turning to fall, we'll do soup. I do a lot of soup and I'm really grateful everybody in my house likes it, eats it. That saves my life. My girls all like chicken salad, tuna salad, those kind of things. Sometimes I do that kind of ahead so that I don't make dinner at night, but they really like things like curry, spaghetti. They like that, but I have pretty adventurous eaters. They'll eat Asian food and, Mexican food, whatever. They won't refuse anything as long as it's not spicy. And so I just don't do spicy food, but almost anything else they'll try. And I get kind of bored quickly if I make the same things too often. So I try to do new things fairly regularly.
I love that. And you do not know how lucky you are that you have adventurous eaters, because I would say 80 to 90% of my audience has at least some type of a picky eater in their family. And it may be that your family's picky in a way, but you've just found out how to work around the things that they don't prefer. But even though it sounds like you've got a lot of things that you can draw from. So then my next question to you is, where are you finding your recipes and your new ideas?
I do a lot of Pinterest. Yeah. And I used to just pin everything on Pinterest and then it was just a mess. I got to the point where I kind of separated into like a specific folder of like tried and true. So I've tried these. I know we like them. And I can pull from those. So I go back to those to try to find some consistent things. I have a few things that I make regularly enough that I don't necessarily need a recipe, if that makes sense.
Yes.
And so those are kind of I try to have certain things so I can just make those and I don't have to think about it too much. But those are the things that if I make them too much, everybody starts to be like, okay, like we did this already. And then I do Pinterest and then I just have a couple websites I kind of rotate through and look at fairly regularly just because they've been consistent.
Okay. You said in your application form for on-air coaching that keeping track of your recipes was something that was kind of a challenge for you.
Yeah, it's a mess. Yeah. Yep.
I'm going to let the cat out of the bag. I am actually working on a meal planning system that includes a way to track your recipes without having to put them all in one place, but a way to say this recipe is in this location and this recipe is in this location. I'll have to get you an early copy of it so you can do a little beta testing for me, Carmen, because I really think that is a big problem for a lot of families.
Yes.
And so with this new system that's going to be coming out, it actually shows how much time it takes, because I believe that weeknight dinners are about time. But then it also says, where is this recipe located? Is it in my Pinterest? What folder is it in? Is it on a website? Where is this website? Is it in my grandma's cookbook? So that you can go and you can say, oh yeah, I know where to go and find this recipe. I know for me, especially when I find recipes online, I'll forget which blogger it was from. And then I'll be like searching and be like, I don't know if that was the right one or.
Right. I did that the other day. I was like, I want pumpkin muffins. And I was like, which recipe did we like? And then I ended up making one and it wasn't the same. It was okay, but it wasn't like as good as the last time. Yeah. And I also, at one point I planned to eat, I don't know if there was some app I tried where you put all of your recipes in there and it got so, I spent like an hour doing it and I was like, I haven't even begun. And I just gave up because it was too much work just to try to get things centrally located. So I love the idea of having something that would tell me where to go look for it instead of trying to have it all in one. It was just a lot of work.
Carmen, I know that app. And I know in the early 2000s, every blogger and every podcaster was advertising affiliate links for that app. And it made me feel really small. Because I thought, I can't do this. It's too exhausting to put all of my recipes in. And everybody kept talking about how it changed their life. And I actually have one friend that still uses it to this day and it works for her. But for me, it was daunting. And
it would take recipes and like change the portions so then I was looking at the recipe later and I was like, this isn't even, now I have to go find it again. Because it wasn't even translated properly. So the idea was good, but the execution was not.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm excited to try something new for sure.
That's why I'm creating this new system, because I feel like so many people have recipes all over the place and people will tell you, oh, print them all out and put them in a binder. And I'm like, that is a lot of paper. And
it is. It is.
And so that's why this new meal planning system, it's going to be coming out. It might even be out by the time this airs. We'll see. But I'll get you an advanced copy in the next week or so you can take a peek at it. Yeah. Okay. So I know that's one of your challenges. What else are you facing? What are the other challenges you're facing in your dinners?
Well, like I said, it's really hard at night to get much done. Like I love cooking. A million years ago when I only had one, I went to school and did some training, like professional chef training. Like I love doing it. I hate cleanup. That's a whole other thing. But, and that used to be my son's job. But now that he's working washing dishes, I feel a little guilty to be like, come home, wash 100 dishes. But the real challenge is just the timing, because to cook during dinner, the only thing I'm really successful at that time is if I'm like, here, watch a show, which I'm okay with doing every once in a while, but I really don't like that being the go-to. And even then, sometimes they're not all content, and I'm trying to, balance a baby and cook, and it steals the joy out of it for me, to be real honest, because I'd love to cook. And ideally I'd just do it, with music and nobody bugging me, but that's, fantasy land in my life right now. I don't mind, leftovers or cooking at different times. I would like to be eating homemade meals most of the time. And sometimes I keep like some frozen things around because I'm like, I just can't tonight, but I'd like to get just a better handle on it. And the other thing is, I'm being pregnant. I am worn out. I'm just really tired. So 3-4 o'clock comes around and I'm like, everything from about 4 o'clock to bedtime is like just kind of getting it done and trying to have a good attitude about it, because I'm ready to go to bed about 4 o'clock. So It's just a weird season.
That season's going to change a little bit come February when you've got a newborn right. and a couple of toddlers. And I totally can see that. Okay. So let me ask you a little bit about your day. Are there pockets during the day that you might be able to do some of the prep for dinner? And I say this because when I am working with families, no matter if it's a stay-at-home mom or a working mom, I am teaching families to separate the prep time from the cook time. And the cook time is what I'm calling when you're adding heat.
Right. Okay.
And the prep is everything else. And is there times during the day where you can catch, 5-10 minutes to do some of the prep? Maybe you're salting chicken, maybe you're cutting vegetables, maybe you're making salads. Is that a possibility for you?
Yeah. We tend to have kind of a crazy morning because first off, everybody wakes up and is starving, and we got to do all that. And then the 5-year-old and a little bit kind of the 3-year-old, we're homeschooling this year. So it's not super intense because it's really pre-kindergarten stuff. But I like to get that kind of under our belt first thing in the morning. Once we get closer to, 10, 11, something like that, then I have kind of a chunk of time there. And then sometimes they'll all nap together, but not always. And then there's kind of they tend to play pretty nice. I don't know, if not everybody's napping, that's a little bit more challenging, but there's a few hours kind of 11, 12, 1, and then maybe there's some time at 2 or 3 as well, depending on naps.
Yes. So what I'm hearing there is there are little pockets of time. Some pockets of time that I've found for mothers in your situation that work is that mid-morning snack time, because they are physically eating and you are in the kitchen. Sometimes that's a really good little time because you're physically in the kitchen and you can do a little prep while they are occupied.
Okay.
So that's something. The other thing is, again, nap times are precious. So I don't always recommend doing it during nap time, but sometimes that post nap playtime when they're just usually really harmonious. That's sometimes a really good time. I mean, nap time always works, but I don't always want people to have to use their nap times to fix dinner.
Every once in a while now, if they're napping, I also will do the same.
Well, yes. and being pregnant right now, that for sure, your body needs that rest. So I think that's wise. But sometimes there's that little post nap time bliss where everybody's kind of in a pleasant mood. Sometimes there's a snack there too. And those are the times where I recommend going into the kitchen and doing just a little bit of prep. Now, you said we're heading into fall and you do a lot of soups. Do you have a slow cooker or an Instant Pot Or do you do everything on the stove or in the oven?
I have an Instapot, which I use for soup. And I also have just a ginormous, like huge pot that I use pretty consistently for soup too, just kind of depending on what I'm doing. Yeah.
Those two things can be really, really helpful, especially the Instant Pot, because if you are doing that little tiny bit of prep, like during that late morning time, get everything and put it already into the liner of your Instant Pot and just leave the liner in your refrigerator.
Okay.
And then when it comes to dinner time, you take that liner out, you put it in the Instant Pot, you put the lid on, and 30 minutes later, bing, 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 dinner's
You're
ready.
Done.
But there's less mess, so you're not having to like clean an extra bowl for the ingredients that you have prepped. And then when it's dinner time and you've got that time where the kids are underfoot and they're all hanging on to mom. Oh my gosh. I had 5 and under at one point, or not.
Oh, you understand.
4, 5 and under, but not 5. I only have 4. Oh, good gosh. But I had 4, 5 and under at one point, and I know that feeling of when they're underfoot. But if all you have to do is take the liner out and put it in the Instant Pot, then that is so easy.
That's a great idea. Yeah, that's a great idea. I really try to keep ideally I'd get as much done ahead of time as possible. Otherwise it ends up being really, I either fall back on kind of the go-tos that are super easy, which is fine sometimes, or I end up putting like a frozen pizza in or something. And I just would prefer not to do that very often.
Well, and you know, that's the thing is we all have seasons or we all have days where the wheels fall off. But when you hit that season and you find that you're hitting that backup meal, I've talked about always have a backup, which is something that you can get on the table in 20 minutes or less with ingredients you have in the house. And if you find that you're doing a backup meal more than you would like, that's when it's time to start looking at, okay, what time do I have? What kinds of recipes can I fit into this season of my life? Because I really believe, you know, you said you went to school and had professional training, and how there's seasons where I call it fancy girl food. I have a party once a year in January, and I can not be a mommy and I can just be a lady and I can make girl food.
Yes. I love it.
And so there's seasons where we do that, and there's seasons where our focus is just feeding the family.
Yes.
But when that feeding the family and life is so stressful that you're hitting backup after backup after backup, that's when it's time to start looking at, okay, what kinds of recipes can I fit with the time that is my reality now? And your reality now is you don't have a lot of energy. Your husband works crazy hours and your kids are little, plus a teenager who floats in and out, right? Mm-hmm. And so what can I do when this phase? You talked about how your kids liked chicken salad and tuna salad and that you can make that up earlier in the day. I have known a lot of families that flip that hot meal from dinner to lunch.
Okay.
And that's a little technique sometimes that helps, because sometimes at that lunchtime, it's easier to be in the kitchen cooking because you have that blissful late morning quiet time. Mm-hmm. You can actually physically be cooking the hot meal, and then you have a cold meal like sandwiches or salads or things at night, and that works better with their schedule. Is that something that might help on a day or two?
Yeah, that might be helpful, especially if I know my husband's not going to be home. He's not picky. I'm really blessed. He will eat anything and never complain. But I would like to, you know, try to make warm meals when I can. But if even if I made something at lunch, I could warm it up for him to have at dinner time. And I guess that's another piece of it too. I try to make him lunches fairly consistently. So I try to during kind of the cleanup hour, pull aside enough that he has some leftovers to take with him to work, because he would really prefer not to be eating out, and financially it's really not what we're trying to do with our money. So I'm trying to stay on top of that, but that can be kind of challenging too.
Well, let me just ask about that, because my husband takes a lunch to work every day from the leftovers that we make. Is that something where he has access to a microwave, or are you putting it in thermoses for him? How does that work?
Well, he actually set up his truck. Like, he has a mobile workshop. It's really interesting. He has it set up so that he has a microwave in his truck. So he can turn on his truck and use his microwave whatever he wants. He's really smart. It's really interesting.
I think that is the coolest thing ever. I love it. It's like his own little portable...
It's his own little house away from home, for sure.
Oh, well, that's brilliant. Okay, so if he has a microwave, This is something that I do is when I fix dinner for my family, I always fix 1 to 2 extra portions. And those become my husband's lunches. And my husband does not like to eat the same thing 2 days in a row. So what I do is I keep those in a very specific container in the freezer, and then he just rotates them. So he might be eating something that we had for dinner 2 weeks ago. He just pulls it out and heats it in the microwave at work at lunch hour. That way, there's always something in his freezer. And every once in a while, he'll be like, I have nothing but fish left. And so we'll have to rebalance the freezer stash for him. Start thinking about that for your husband. Start thinking about making 1 or 2 extra portions and keeping them in the freezer so that you're not chasing your tail. You're ahead of yourself just a little bit. And he can always pull that out and then reheat it for his lunches. Then on those days when he's not home for dinner, he can reheat what you've had for lunch, or he can pull something out of the freezer that you've had in the past, and he can have, a hearty, well-balanced, home-cooked meal without having to hit fast food and all of that, because that's something that we value in our family too, is my husband's just like, I just don't want to be putting that in my body all the time, and it's ridiculously expensive.
And he feels really sluggish and gross afterwards. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. So I had not thought about freezing. I usually freeze like giant bags and like taco meat or whatever in there. Yeah. And I've heard you talk about that before, but I hadn't thought about I could really freeze up a size that's appropriate for him for a meal. Because at first when you said freezer, I was like, well, then I'd have this big thing I'd have to thaw out. Duh. Just make a smaller portion and write what it is for him. He would love that. Okay.
Yeah. So smaller portions in the freezer can be a really, really great thing. What I usually recommend is finding a container that is the container just for those freezer meals. And in our house, I have some inexpensive, the disposable Ziploc things where it's like $3 at the grocery store and you get 4 or 5 of them. If they break or they fall apart or they don't come home, no big deal. But I have one specific container, and those are the size that my husband's meals go in. Go through the grocery store or Walmart or wherever and see if you can find a semi-disposable container that fits, his meal size portion, and start just putting those aside. And in the beginning, it means that you're going to be making larger portions of your dinner.
Right. Yeah.
To kind of get your stash built up. And then it'll be just like making 1 or 2 extra portions. And your son, when he gets tired of eating pizza all the time, which, it happens.
It does happen.
And I promise you, I was a missionary for a year, and I was dealing with teenagers. And so whenever you're with teenagers, they're always bringing in pizza. And I ate pizza 5 days a week for a year, and didn't touch pizza again for 3 years, and didn't eat pepperoni for 6 years. So you really can't believe it. You can get tired of pizza. I promise you that. And so when he can even pull those out, and those can be foods for him too. So that I think could be, we talk about just little small, rather than freezing large bags, freezing small bags is the small little tweak that can make a difference in your family.
There you go.
Okay. So what other questions do you have for me? What other challenges do you want to tackle?
I guess the other thing is, I didn't really think about it until just now, but breakfast would probably be something I used to be really good about, being consistent, having just kind of hearty, good breakfast. And lately I've been finding myself not as great about it. And it doesn't help that my 5 and 3-year-old, if they had their choice, would eat cereal every single day, even though I don't buy Lucky Charms. It's it's Crispix or whatever. It's nothing fancy, but they're like cereal. And I'm like, so I feel like I'm kind of battling a monster I created, but I don't want them to eat cereal every day. They'll do oatmeal. They like yogurt and granola. And I guess I'm limited on energy for the morning too, but I guess it would be nice to kind of think through some new, breakfast.
I love breakfast, and I have some ideas. Does your family eat eggs?
I don't like eggs, which is weird. I love everything, but I'm not really an egg person. But most of them will eat eggs. Yes.
Okay. Does your family like breakfast sausage? If a turkey breakfast sausage, is that something they would like?
Yeah, we generally don't do a lot of pork, but anything other than pork, they're pretty flexible with, I think.
Our family doesn't eat a lot of pork either, but I have a recipe on the website. I'll link to it in the show notes for this episode for a homemade turkey sausage. And this is a little bit of a meal prep kind of thing, but I will make several pounds of this turkey sausage, and it has turkey, ground turkey, poultry seasoning, salt, and a little bit of maple syrup. It's really, really simple. It's really, really clean. Originally would make it in logs and then would like slice it like the Jimmy Dean. You'd slice the sausage into patties. But I have actually most recently been making it into patties and putting it on a sheet pan and freezing it with layers of parchment paper until they're solid. And then I end up with all of these little patties, and I can pull out 5 patties in the morning out of my freezer, put them in the pan, and in 7 minutes, I've got turkey sausage, which is nice and hearty, and my family can eat that. Right. Even if they eat it alongside a smaller bowl of cereal, they're getting a little bit of protein, and the ground turkey, depending upon where you get it and what kind, it's usually less expensive than beef and other things to be feeding your family in the morning.
Right.
So that recipe might be a good thing for you. Would your family like breakfast sandwiches?
I don't know that my girls would go for that.
Yeah.
My husband would love that. He would so would my son probably, but I don't know that my girls would go for it.
You could take a little piece of that cooked turkey breakfast sausage, put it on an English muffin or a bagel that's been toasted with a piece of cheese, and wrap them individually in baggies for your husband and son. That's something, and that's pre-made. So, someday when you've got a little window of time, or maybe you've got a babysitter or your son's home to help with the little ones, you could do a little bit of that and keep those in the freezer. My other go-to for breakfast is a baked oatmeal.
There you go.
I love a baked oatmeal because you can get it in the pan the night before, keep it in your refrigerator, and then all you have to do is take the container out of your refrigerator and put it in the oven. It takes 20 or 30 minutes. So I'm usually like the first thing I wake up, I go downstairs, put the baked oatmeal in the oven, and then I come up and like wash my face, brush my teeth, do all of that because it takes a little bit of time. It's not a super fast breakfast, but if you have it all prepped the night before and just throw that in the oven, and I'll link in the show notes, but I've got all sorts of different flavors on there. And if you've had culinary training, you can take the basic recipe and make all sorts of different flavors that are really good.
Sure. I haven't really tried that. I think my girls would like that. Yeah.
It has a little bit of eggs in it, so you're getting some protein, but it's not like you're eating an egg. My family's not really big on eggs either. And we had one kid that had a real big egg intolerance. And I really think there's something like in our genes that our family just is not that big on eggs. And I'm going to let my kids listen to their bodies on that. Like, I'm not going to push an egg on them if they're not. But the eggs mixed in kind of bulks up the protein in there. And there's, the hearty oatmeal, and you can adjust the sugar level up or down to your family's taste. I've got one with lemon and blueberries and one with cranberries and oranges. And there's a pumpkin spice one that's really good. So this baked oatmeal is great because you can make it up the night before and then just toss it in the oven first thing in the morning.
So does it kind of come out as like a square, like you cut them into squares? Yeah, you cut them into
squares. It's almost like a like a dense coffee cake maybe is the texture. Okay. So, and I like the edge pieces because they get kind of a little crusty on the edges.
Crispy. Perfect. Okay.
My kids actually I'll put it in a bowl and they'll pour milk over it, or even like half and half if I'm trying to especially if you've got a kid that you're trying to get a few more calories in the morning, which I've got a couple of kids.
All of them.
A little half and half poured on top of it, or even heavy cream. I mean, depends on how far you're wanting to go with it. I like it because there's a little protein. They get a little bit of fat. They've got some fiber, and it's just a nice little hearty breakfast that is super easy to make, and it's really inexpensive, which is nice. So that's one recipe. The other recipe, if you're trying to get kids something hearty, is breakfast cookies. I have these breakfast cookies that I've got 2 versions, one that uses canned pumpkin and goes kind of pumpkin spice direction. The other one uses mashed bananas, and there's peanut butter and oats, a little bit of flour, a little bit of butter, and they are kind of like a dense muffin. So they're a soft kind of cakey kind of cookie. And I have found that if my kids eat one of those breakfast cookies with like a glass of milk, it is a stick to your ribs kind of hearty, because there's a lot of fat with the peanut butter and then the oats, and then the milk kind of adds a little bit of protein to it. So you've got the protein and the fat, and I often recommend that for families that have athletes that they're trying to get a snack into them before they're going to a practice in the afternoon. I make these up in giant batches and then I freeze them. My kids...
That was going to be my question. Can you freeze these?
You totally can freeze them.
Okay.
My kids like them frozen. Some people, you can thaw them the night before. Like if you're going to have breakfast cookies, take them out of the freezer, set them on the counter in a container, and they'll be thawed by the next morning, or you can toss them in the microwave for just a minute. But my kids actually like them a little bit frozen. So if your kids like that, or especially if you've got, a little kid that's cutting a tooth or something, the cold kind of is good when they were toddlers. I made these a lot when my kids were little because they were fast, easy. I could pull them out of the freezer. I could make 36 of them in one fell swoop and just pull them out. So these breakfast cookies are really great. So we kind of gave you a few ideas. Look at that turkey sausage and have the patties all made up so you can just quick fry them up in the morning. Look at that baked oatmeal that you can prep the night before and just throw in the oven. Or look at these breakfast cookies. And those are kind of some new, kind of hearty breakfast. And again, all of them are really inexpensive, which I like too. It's cheaper than cereal. Cereal gets expensive.
It really does. And then they eat it and then 10 minutes later they're hungry. And I'm like, oh, great.
Yeah.
Again, we're hungry. And I knew they were going to be. When they ate the cereal, I knew they were going to be hungry. I'm like, I did this to myself.
So kind of a way to kind of wean them onto that is maybe have some of that turkey sausage with a smaller bowl of cereal.
I like it. And I feel like the breakfast cookie thing would go over good too, just because it's called a cookie. Right?
And they're really yummy. I love them. And again, they're hearty. Serve them with a glass of milk or something, and you've got like a stick to your rib kind of breakfast that keeps you going.
That's perfect. Thank you.
Oh,
I like
Carmen,
that.
This was so much fun.
Agreed.
I am so glad that you were able to join us. For others that have listened to this is what it's like to be coached by me. When you listen to the podcast, you'll know that it's always about just small little tweaks that can make a big difference in your life. And if you're interested in coming on air, just like Carmen has, I have an application at feedyourfamilytonight.com/apply. It wasn't too scary, was it, Carmen?
No, not at all. It's actually been really great.
Oh, so I'm so glad you joined us. For now, friends, we will catch you next time. Take care.